Andy Sneap, a producer from the UK. I tend to do a lot of the heavier bands. Megadeth, Testament, Killswitch Engage, Exodus. I'm also playing guitar in the band Hell. I kind of got into producing from playing guitar. It was a natural sort of step for me to get into. After my first band, Sabbath, split up in 89, 90, I got more and more into the engineering side of things because it was something that fascinated me back then. You know, getting tone in the studio. I don't know how a producer who isn't a player can get the tone. You've got to feel that response and the way the guitar reacts between you and the speaker. There's got to be something within a band that I can relate to, and it's got to be, well, even whether it's the vocal, there's something about the vocals I'm digging, or I feel I can put into it, or there's something in the guitars where there's a melody that there's a type of melody that's in their music that I can relate to. A lot of the times, you know, I'm working with some of these older metal bands, you know, from what I grew up watching, like say Saxon or Accept, where because I was such a fan of the music originally, I'm sort of brought on board because they need almost reminding sometimes of where they were. You know, it's very difficult when you're in a bubble within a band. You tend to, you know, certain other aspects tend to take over. And when we get a bit older, and you know, I'm guilty of this as well. When you get a bit older down the line, you tend to lose focus of where you were when you were, you know, those magical points in your career. So I always try and get the older bands to listen back to what they were doing and try and get them in that state, you know, that frame of mind a little bit. I mean, sonically, obviously, there's a stamp there that I put on these on bands that I work with. I think any good producer has got a certain style that he brings to the table and a way that he hears the music. I was also fascinated by the equipment, which was why I was such a gear geek and so fascinated by tone and different amps and different guitars and different pickups. My first guitar I got when I was 12 years old, and it was an old Starway guitar from the 60s, which was like an old Woolworths guitar. It was but it actually had two light switches on it for pickup selectors. Didn't have the trem arm with it, but I used to get I think it was this old screwdriver I used to be able to stick into the socket and, you know, try and dive bomb it. When I was approached by Fishman, I wasn't sure whether it was the usual sort of sales pitch that a company gives you when they're trying to get a product off the ground. And I'd heard of the pickups, but you know, I was so set in my ways, if I'm honest, that it would have to be something good to convince me. I'm not the sort of guy that's going around all these companies putting my name to anything just for the sake of it. But literally, when I put these pickups into, it was actually an ESP Edwards Flying V that I'd got, and it just knocked me sideways, if I'm honest. The clarity of it, the openness of it, yet the tightness of the low end, and the smoothness of the top end was really everything that I'd wanted out of a pickup. And I've never had as many people compliment me on a live tone as when I fitted one of these into that guitar. So again, I was just, the more I used it, the more I was convinced, you know, you guys want something good here. Well, the thing I liked about it was the clarity of it, and the clarity of the note, the single note. You know, with a lot of metal stuff, the low end's got to be really tight, but when you're mixing an album, you're always trying to dig the note out a little bit more, so it's got its own little space in the mix. And this had got it, but it wasn't like a honky sort of mid-range that was there. It got more of a natural openness to it, and it seemed to have a lot of headroom to it. It didn't feel compressed. It was tight. The top end again was vicious, you know, with I'm using the Kemper setup live, so it's really tight and, you know, quite gated with that, but it was silent. I wasn't getting any sort of feedback coming in from elsewhere. It wasn't, even though it's a good hot output on it, it's not pulling the strings out of tune on the feedback. It's got the power and the headroom, but it's got every other quality that I'm after with a pickup as well. It's got the tight low end and the mid-range note to it that really sits it well in a mix and gives its own unique spot. Yeah, I'm not suspicious about technology. I've always been one of these guys that is quite open-minded, and, you know, I like, you know, with the recording side of things, I've moved with the times as well, you know, from when we were using 2-inch tape through to Pro Tools, to profiling, to drum triggering. I've always tried to keep my eye on the ball of where things are going. I think it's important to do that. which is why, you know, with these pickups, I was very into trying something new with them, and open-minded about it. It's always been straight down the line with me, and very much I'd say it how I see it.